I mentioned in a previous video that I bought smooth peanut butter by mistake, so I can use this in cooking. But I had another idea today. And that was inspired by some expensive peanut butter I bought from a company called the Butter Bike Company. And I bought their smoked chili peanut butter. It's really good. A bit pricey, but it was really, really good. And it's peanut butter with, as it says, smoked chilies in it. And it was fantastic. And I remember when I was eating that, thinking about what other flavours might go into peanut butter. And I think Bombay mix might. So Bombay mix, sort of curry flavour, available in different forms, 2 different varieties of Bombay mix here. Now, the reason I think this will go with peanuts is there are commonly peanuts already in it. But rather than smashing up a whole lot of Bombay mix and mixing it into this jar, which then might spoil quicker than either of these things would on their own, I think we'll just get a piece of toast, put some peanut butter on it and sprinkle the Bombay mix on top and taste it like that. Don't worry about this, by the way. I had an argument with the cheese grater. Cheese grater won. So, bread, toasted, and then buttered and peanut butter. And then I think this Bombay mix doesn't actually even need breaking up because it's quite fine already. So we'll just have some of that on there. This one doesn't have peanuts in it. It's just little fried lentils and tiny noodles and some other little bits of fried dough. I'll just kind of crush that into the top of the peanut butter like that. And then I will give you my verdict of this combination. That is really good. That is superb. Of course it's great because we already know that the general curry vibe of Bombay mix and peanuts go together. But yeah, that really, really works. Today I'm going to cook some eggs following a method I saw on a video that had the title, How Daddy Cooks Eggs When Mummy's Away. It's a method for making something that's midway between scrambled eggs and an omelette. And there's a good reason for doing it. I've tried this a couple of times and it's actually very good. So anyway, I've got 2 eggs here that I've just beaten, and I've got a little bit of snipped fresh chives in there. The method in the video didn't have these inclusions in the eggs, but I'm going to do this because I like it. Also about 25 grams of grated red Leicester cheese there. And I'm mixing this in with the egg. So we'll just wait for that pan to come up to temperature. And I'm going to do my usual combo of a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of butter, because I like that flavour combination. For this we need a spatula that is in width about half the diameter of the pan. And that's just starting to foam now. So I'm going to turn the heat down and then in with the eggs. I'll just give that a little jiggle around. And then all we do is this. Using the spatula, we just push this pile of cooked egg around the pan gently. Doesn't matter if we miss a little bit like that, we'll get it on the next pass. So we'll push that around like that until there is no more of a puddle of uncooked egg. Pretty good. And we'll just let that cook for a little bit, still a bit jiggly. We'll let that cook for a moment before we flip it. And we have to kind of do an anti-gravity flip here where we toss both the pan and the spatula, because that's very tender and soft there. So that's going to fall apart if we just flip it conventionally. So what we're actually going to do is get the spatula right under there like that, and then the pan and the spatula go up, and we kind of flip it in free fall. Heat can go off now. Could have actually turned that heat off a little bit earlier. I've got a tiny bit of browning here. You can do this if you turn the heat off a bit earlier than I did. You can make this with no browning at all. And so you get something that's like an omelette, but it's also like scrambled eggs. So I'm just going to have this in a toasted muffin like that. But yeah, what you end up with is I don't know whether to call this scrambled eggs in one piece or a really tender omelette, but either way you end up with something that has the delicate tenderness of scrambled eggs but the coherence of an omelette. It's really rather good. I think we'll have a few little chili flakes on there, a little bit of salt, and let's give that a taste. It is a different thing to either scrambled eggs or an omelette. It's a thing all of its own, and it's really good. There will be a link in the video description to the video where I got this idea from. Time for an insect friend. This is an oil beetle. They're called oil beetles because they produce an irritating liquid if they're disturbed, just to deter predators, because obviously this is quite a fat beetle and it would be a tasty snack to a bird or something like that. So they produce this kind of acrid, irritating chemical if they're disturbed, which deters predators from eating them. No, Eva, you leave it alone. Interesting things about the oil beetle: the wing cases aren't big enough. They look like they've tried on the wrong size jacket. So other things about the oil beetle: these are parasitic on solitary bees, which might seem like a bad thing, but it's not necessarily. So the presence of this beetle here indicates a healthy local bee population. So if the bees weren't healthy, if there wasn't enough of a population of bees to support this particular parasite, then this beetle wouldn't be here. So the larva lives underground and just eats the bee larvae and the store of food that the solitary bee has stored up. So whilst that's not so great for the bee that happens to get eaten, it is, as I say, it's an indicator that the local population of bees is quite healthy. Going to plant some tomato seeds today. I've got two varieties of tomato I want to start with, one called cream sausage and one called Koralik. I bought these at a seed event called Seedy Sunday in Downton on the edge of the New Forest. Loved, by the way, for the same reason that I had the plaster on for the peanut butter thing. Cheese grater injury, just want to keep the dirt out of it. So I'm going to be using these fibre pots. So we'll have 4 of each, I think, just Koralik and cream sausage. Cream sausage, delightfully weird. Cream sausage is a delightfully weird name for tomatoes, and it is just a pale yellow elongated tomato. And I might just put those things in there just to keep those pots standing upright for now. And then we'll make a little hole in the top of the compost on each one. So cream sausage on the left. We don't get a lot of seeds, but I don't suppose we really need a lot. I'm just going to pick out 4 seeds. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That one goes back in the bag. I might give those to a friend if somebody else wants to grow their own tomatoes. And then over here, Koralik, and this is a miniature tomato plant, so it's something you can grow in hanging baskets or pots, and that indeed may be what we do with it. Although I have got a notion to make good use of my upstairs greenhouse. I thought we might grow some tomatoes elsewhere as well. So again, we just want 4 seeds, if there are 4 seeds in there. I think there are only 5 in there. 4. And the last one can go back in. And there we go. So exceptionally abundant and exceptionally sweet large cherry toms. Very early and blight resistant. Sounds ideal, doesn't it? The cream sausage one is apparently a paste tomato, so it's for making tomato paste. And then we'll just give each one of these pots a little water. So cream sausage goes over this side, Koralik over that side. Now, because we are still dealing with relatively cold conditions, these are going to come indoors with me, so I will just give this a wash out. That's going to come indoors and go on a windowsill in the house. Right, so that's a start. Those two things will go there, and we'll add more things to those over the coming weeks. In other news, here in the upstairs greenhouse, this Cape Gooseberry, this is the trough of Cape Gooseberries that I pruned back and just planted in the soil, and it's showing some signs of recovery. Green shoots on every single plant, so that's very hopeful. Don't look at these, they don't exist. The littlest watercress farm, looking a little bit sad at the moment, but there's a lot of plant in there. I've topped up the water. We'll run this for another year. We'll see what we get out of it on the second year. These plants might be a little bit root bound now, just because they've filled up these troughs, but we'll see what happens. On this steep bank here, where we've been cutting this twice a year and treating it pretty much as a hay meadow, we've got a lot more primroses this year. A really lovely collection of primroses there, including some interesting pink ones. That is a natural colour variation of primroses, but we seem to have got quite a few of them. But yeah, they do that in the wild, and obviously these plants are sometimes selected for even deeper colours, and you can get primula varieties that are really quite vivid, but the pinkish ones are a variation that does occur in the wild. So yeah, all the way along this bank, look, we've got quite a lot of primrose plants established, including lots of little ones here, all the way down here, and that's just come about by managing the way the grass grows on here. Just cutting the grass twice a year and taking it away to try to favour the broadleaf plants. And especially here, look at that, beautiful primroses. And again, we've got some of the pink varieties here. I saw one that's really deep pink down there, actually. There we go, just down there. One that's really dark pink. Even down here we've got some that are a little bit whiter, a little bit paler yellow, and some that are a bit deeper yellow. A really cheerful spring plant, I think, the primrose. Actually, while we're up here, that's the basket that I made in the Advent calendar series. Completely dried out now, and it has gone a little bit loose. But actually, I really like the colour of those cornice rods that we used to make that. That's actually quite a pretty colour for a basket, even though the basket itself is not that usable. I did think I was going to hang this up in a tree and maybe let a bird nest in it, but I might not use it for that. I might use it for something else. I want to plant some peas, specifically Mange 2. I've been using Mange 2 as my scam baiting email identity so long now, I can't help seeing that word and thinking it's talking about me. Anyway, so these are purple podded Mange 2 peas. So you eat the whole thing, hence the name Mange 2. Reason for picking purple ones actually is that you can't miss them on the plant. So when you grow these and you go looking for the pods, you can't miss them in amongst all the foliage. If you grow regular peas, sometimes you miss a pod, and if you allow these to develop and the seeds to develop, the plant will stop producing new pods. So once it's got the kind of hormone signal saying, I've successfully set seed, the plant will stop producing. So if you miss a few pods, the crop ends early. Whereas these purple ones, because they're easy to find and easy to spot and you get them all, the plant will often carry on producing for longer. And of course they're purple, which is the best colour. So, the pack says we can plant these in March, direct sow outdoors. I'm not just going to put these in dry straight away. So, let's just have a look at the seeds. So you can just put these straight in the soil like that and allow the moisture in the soil to hydrate them and sprout them. That one won't grow because it's split. I'm going to soak these first, just to give them a head start. So I've got a piece of kitchen paper towel. I'm just going to put that in the bottom of this takeaway container, like that. Enough water just to wet it and make a thin layer, and then we'll just put those seeds on top of there. So they're not completely immersed, they're just sitting in about half their own thickness of water, and that means that they'll get nicely hydrated, they'll soak, they'll swell up, they'll start to germinate, but because they've still got access to the air, they will not start to ferment or anything like that. I've still got about 2/3 of the packet left. That's as many as I'm going to plant this session. I'll plant another batch in a couple of weeks' time once I've seen these starting to sprout, and then we'll get a hopeful succession of cropping. So to stop those drying out, I'm just going to loosely enclose them in a plastic bag like that, and then in a couple of days' time those will be ready to plant outside, and we'll go and have a look at that right now.
So my pea plants are going to need some sticks to grow up, and rather than using canes, I'm going to use these these sycamore twigs that we trimmed off those trees that we coppiced. So I'm going to pick out some nice twiggy bits of this, really actually quite ideal for peas to grow up because it's got lots of little bits to grab hold of. Get some nice twiggy bits of stick like this and go and push them into the soil upstairs. Couldn't be much simpler. These sticks are just going to be pushed into the ground here. So I was thinking I might take the bark off of these twigs just in case they take root, because they are starting to sprout, but I don't think they will. And yeah, these are more twiggy and branched than garden canes, than bamboo canes, and so this is going to give the pea plants something to grab hold of. And I'm just going to let the branches of these twigs intertwine a little bit and get tangled up, and they'll support each other. Something like that. This netting around here, by the way, is notionally to keep the dog and next door's cats off this patch, mostly Eva, because she will love to dig holes in this nice prepared soil. Okay, so yeah, something like that, and then I'll plant my peas around the base of each stick, maybe 2 peas per stick, and when I start my second crop of peas, we'll start another couple of rows of sticks here and grow them in a succession this way.
24 hours have elapsed, and look how much these peas have swollen up. Let me just show you. There's one of the soaked ones, and that's what they were like when they were dry. So we need to get these outside and get them in the soil. In case you're wondering, the purpose for the paper in here, it's not strictly necessary. It was really just to stop all of the water pooling in one corner or something like that and not soaking the seeds properly. Having that paper there to wick the water across the bottom means that there's no chance of any of the seeds missing out on getting a good soak. Anyway, let's get these outside and get them planted.
Okay, and it rained last night, which is just ideal. So all we really need to do is make a hole, drop in a couple of peas, cover it up, and we'll just do that all the way along. Inside and outside of the sticks. And these probably won't need much watering unless we don't get any rain at all in the next few weeks. Soil is fairly free draining here on this vegetable patch, so it does need a little bit of looking after. Okay, we're going to just about the right number of seeds actually as well, so that's good. Last two in that hole, there we go. So there we go, that's all the peas sown. I imagine those are going to take a week or so before they start to emerge. I'm going to be away for a week actually, so I'll get Jenny to keep an eye on those. The netting and the sticks will, to some extent, inhibit the pigeons from getting in there and eating those peas, because they can't land straight in there. I will just water those in actually. I'll just give them a bit of water across the top of the soil here, just to settle the surface down, just to give them a bit more encouragement to get their roots down, but mainly just to settle the soil around them and continue to give them this moist environment that they've started off in, so that they get off to a good start. Because once they get their roots down, they really won't need very much looking after at all unless we have a drought. There we go, peas are planted. Well, the first lot anyway. More tomato seeds. I've got a variety here called Currant Red, and it's a kind of almost like a wild type tomato. Tiny fruits in great abundance, really good flavour apparently. This is from Premier Seeds Direct, so I'm just going to plant a few of these. I think I might actually work over here because it's a bit more convenient. Okay. Tiny little seeds, even for tomatoes. And that's interesting. It's a Ziploc bag, but it's also been heat sealed shut. Right, just want 4 seeds. I've got about 20 there. And I decided I'm not going to do that thing. A lot of people will plant multiple seeds in each pot and then pinch out the weaker seedling. I'm just not going to do that. I'd rather not grow more seeds than I need. So we'll just cover those over, press them down a little bit, and a bit of water on them. Just give them a little drink. And then I'll take these indoors and put them in the propagator alongside the others, but I do need to label them. So I'll just reuse this label from last year. I'll just find something to carry those indoors. Maybe that thing. Right, so those are going to come indoors with me, and I'll put them alongside the others in the propagator. The remaining seeds, well, I'll see if I can find somebody to give them away to, because we've got 75 seeds in there and I only needed 4. The broad beans that we planted in the upstairs garden didn't come up at all. I think something might have eaten the seeds. So we've started some more broad beans in pots here, and they're doing really well. So these have been hardening off for about a week now. So hardening off means basically they come out of the greenhouse during the day, just get exposed to a bit of cooler air to acclimatise them to cooler conditions. They're quite hardy plants anyway, but the fact that they've been grown under glass, and if they were brought straight out from there, they would suffer. So yeah, they're just given a week or so of days out before we put them out for real. Just got the tiniest problem here in the herb patch. This is chives, this is garlic chives. Chives are kind of spreading along this way. This is chives, This is a grape hyacinth, and so are all of those. Grape hyacinths are poisonous, you don't want to eat those. Chives, of course, edible. So I'm gonna dig up this grape hyacinth and just move it, just get rid of it, so that there's a bit of a separation between the chives and the grape hyacinths. That's another one there that's got to come out. So that there, they're going to come right out. We get the whole plant out, including the bulb, and we'll just move that somewhere else. Sadly, my capsicum flexuosum plant here in the greenhouse not doing all that well. It might still pull through. The other one's not that great either, but the one I took indoors is doing fine. So we do still stand a chance of getting a taste of a different kind of capsicum fruit this year. I'll go and show you that one in a moment. This is the capsicum flexuosum plant that I potted up in a previous video and brought indoors, and that one's doing rather well. In fact, it's growing off quite nicely now, so I'm hopeful I'll be able to put this back in the greenhouse when it warms up, and hopefully that one will fruit. It's the 4th of April. I'm coming to the end of a week's stay in Spain here with my mum, who lives out here. We're near Puerto de Mataron, near Cartagena. And there will be a couple of main videos from this trip, including an attempt to go gold panning. But here's a small selection of things that just happened but don't make it into entire videos. So we've had lunch. It's time for the fish to have a bit of lunch. What we've got here, I think, is grey mullet and banded bream. Mullet are getting the lion's share of it. Well, the bream got that one.
Está bueno, pues lo acaba de cortar ahora mismo. Yo lo he medido, no importa. La puntilla te la comes.
Last time I was here in Spain, I climbed up, well, a mountain you can only just see the tiny little tip of up there, Las Peñas Blancas, the White Cliffs. I haven't done a mountain climb this time because you've had to put up with me doing gold panning instead. But I'm thinking maybe next time I might try climbing that one there. Not sure if that's a mountain or just a very big hill. That mountain with the mast on top of it and the little knob that's sticking out on the side. Looks like it might be quite a good climb. Probably quite a nice view from up there. There are some other candidates though, so I'll try and capture those in a moment, and maybe we'll have a look at those too. The other possibility is the cliffs up there behind the campsite. Kind of a lot of red cliffs, and I have speculated in the past, I wonder if those are called Las Peñas Rojas or something. Not quite as tall as Las Peñas Blancas over there, but again, might be a nice view from up there, and I know you can get up there. But that'll be on my next trip, probably next year, or maybe later this year. So I'm here for a week in early April, and these are orange trees and they're in bloom, and so I cannot resist spending a bit of time enjoying the orange blossom. Oh, it's just so good. And the bees think so too. So if you've never had a chance to smell orange blossom, I don't really know how to describe it to you, except that it is just intoxicatingly fragrant. It's like a very pure, clean, floral scent. It doesn't ever get too much. I could stand here all day with my nose in an orange flower.
but I suppose I can't. So other options in terms of climbing mountains next time. So there are these red cliffs up here, and there's a path that goes all the way up there. I think it goes under the foot of those cliffs, and then up over the top and just round the corner there's a spring, a fuente, which could be interesting to visit. So that's a possibility. Then there's that mountain over there, which looks small, but that's because it's far away. That is Sierra de las Moreras, the mountains of the mulberries. That looks quite steep, and actually it's quite a big mountain. It's not as tall above sea level as the White Cliffs, which are somewhere over there. It's through the trees. The White Cliffs that I climbed last time, so that is a higher elevation. But when I climbed that one, I started from about a third of the way up, because the mountain road I started from goes a little way up the hills. This one I would start from more or less sea level, so it might actually be about the same amount of climb with those two factors, with starting lower down but also having less to climb. So that's a possibility. We'll have a look a little bit closer because we've got to go to the supermarket. That's got an interesting name. There is also a historic lead mine up there, actually an archaeological site that it was a lead mine, I think probably in Roman times and perhaps before. So that could be interesting. Or there's the mountain with the fountain. Or, as I say, there is that other hill over there with a mast on top, which I could walk to from here. So that's a possibility. So all of those things we will consider as possible options for an expedition next time. So yeah, as I say, that could be my plan for my next trip out here, maybe in October or something. So back now, only been away a week, and things are looking great here. These are all my tomato plants. So we've got cream sausage, we've got 3 plants of 4 coming up. Currant, we've got 3 of 4. Moneymaker, we've got 1 of 2, and Heralic, we've got 3 of 4. These plants are looking a little bit on the spindly side though, so I think we might move this whole apparatus out into the greenhouse now where they can get a bit more light. My capsicum flexuosum is actually looking really nice and healthy. That's good to see. So those can go there, I think. These are all dwarf French beans, which I only planted yesterday, so no sign of life just there yet. This is my Swiss chard. Actually looks like it needs a bit of watering, so let's do that now. But we've got a few plants coming up here now, so that's a good sign. I'll grow these on until they've got their second set of leaves, and then those can go out. Give these beans a little bit more water as well. Up here in the upstairs greenhouse, the Cape gooseberries are sprouting nicely. And I think this time I will pinch these out to make them more bushy this time around. This oxalis is rather taking over. You can't get rid of this stuff. That looks like potatoes. Don't think it is though. Need to do some weeding in here. I'm going to install a different watering system this year, at least this end of it. I've got some better piping and I'm going to install it permanently around the edge of the greenhouse. Hopefully that will make a better job of the watering. Out here, the very first shoots of the peas I planted. These are the Mange 2 peas. There's the first one just starting to sprout there. Need to give these a little bit more water. And I think it's time for this bin to come off the rhubarb. So yeah, lots of forced rhubarb. I'll pick a few more of these stalks. We'll freeze some. We'll make something with them today, and then
we'll let this plant recover.
So yeah, I think that might be enough rhubarb to be going on with. We'll use some of that today. We'll also freeze some of it. Just happened to pick up a tray of lovely strawberries today. I've already eaten one of that in the middle there. Rhubarb and strawberries are a good combination. So most of that rhubarb's going to go in the freezer. I've just chunked it up like that, put it on a tray. I'll freeze it like that. It doesn't need blanching or anything. We'll just freeze that. When it's frozen solid, I'll kind of break it off of here, put it in a box or a bag. So there's, I don't know, probably about 3 kilos of rhubarb there. I've saved the most tender stalks and we're going to make pudding with them today. And that's just going to be a rhubarb and strawberry and apple crumble. So the nicest, thinnest, most tender stalks of the rhubarb here. Into this oven-proof dish. These strawberries almost seem too nice to cook, but why not use nice strawberries? I don't know, we'll pick the least promising looking strawberries from here. There's some that have actually got a little bit of damage on them, so I'll pick the ones that I'm least likely to want to eat exactly as they come out the box. We'll trim the damaged bits off them, the slightly less ripe ones. We'll keep the rest of those for eating fresh. And yeah, these strawberries are hardly going to need any preparation. We'll just take the core out. Probably just quarter them like that. And then just to round out the flavours a little bit, I've got a little apple, a little Braeburn. I will peel this just because apple skin can tend to go a bit tough in a pie. Just have, I'm going to cut this really small so that it cooks in the same time as the rhubarb and everything else. So that'll just go across the top of that, like that. Then we're just going to have a couple of tablespoons of sugar. That's all. That's all it'll need. Just mix those fruits and the sugar together. And that'll sweeten those as they bake. Crumble topping, I'm just going to make in the food processor. So I've got 50 grams of butter, about 75 grams of wholemeal spelt flour. I'm going to process that first, basically to rub the fat into the flour. Okay, so that's made a kind of crumbly texture. I've got about 50 grams of walnut pieces. And we'll just give those a little whiz round just to break them up into smaller pieces. Good. We'll have some almond flour, or ground almonds. I'm going to guess this is going to be about 50 grams. Light brown, soft light brown sugar, like 2. I've got 50 grams of flaked almonds. Now I'm not going to mix these with the blade. So we'll take that piece out now. I'll just mix those in with the spoon. I don't want to break those up because those are going to give it a nice crumbly texture. And then this crumble mixture just goes onto the top of the fruit. And as you might have guessed, I just made that up as I went along. Just basically a little bit of flour and fat, a little bit of sugar, and some nuts. In whatever proportion you like, really. You could also use smashed up biscuits, but I haven't. So that's going to go in the oven now, 180 degrees Celsius for 25 minutes or so, maybe half an hour, just until we see the top is nice and toasty and starting to go crumbly. and when we see the fruit has cooked and is starting to bubble up through the surface. Okay, well there it is, and it's going to be underneath that crust. It's going to be fruity napalm. So I think we'll just let that cool a little bit before we taste a bit. Okay, I'm just going to serve a little bit of this just so we can have a tiny taste, because it's not actually a meal time or anything like that, but I just want to see how this has come out. So there we go, strawberry and rhubarb and apple crumble. And I'm going to have with this a bit of Fage yogurt, that stuff. Right, time for a little taste. This bit's going to be really hot. Yeah, and the strawberries and rhubarb really do complement each other incredibly well. There's a fragrance in there that doesn't belong to either of them, actually. They've sort of combined to make a fruit that tastes a little bit tropical. Yeah, if I had to guess, I might think there was guava in there or something. Very good. That is a very tasty combo. Time for some comment positivity, where I've just skimmed off some of the best of the YouTube comments and we'll talk about them. So lots of comments on the video where Jenny cooked rhubarb upside down cake for me because I had a boo-boo on my finger. Thanks very much to Jenny for helping out. I hope the finger recovers well. Another great video. I never realised how many uses there are for Greek yogurt. Edit, thank you Jenny for helping out. Hope Mike's finger has a speedy recovery. Do us all a vid on what happened to your finger. What happened? So lots of well wishes about my silly injury on my finger. Literally, I just grated a chunk of skin off my knuckle with, well, a cheese grater, but I was grating broccoli stalk. It was just one of those wounds where it just wouldn't heal very easily. I think just because it was right on the knuckle there, just it kept on not closing. And as a result, it started to look a little bit angry. So I went along to hospital and they said it didn't look infected, but they put an antibiotic and antiseptic dressing on there and told me to leave that on there for a couple of days. Unfortunately, that couple of days spanned the days when I had planned to make a video about the rhubarb. So Jenny very kindly stepped in and did the cooking and baking for me, and the cake was fantastic. Jenny's a much better baker than I am. Anyway, yeah, I'm not going to do a detailed video. It's actually healed up completely nicely now. I'll do that way up. I don't know if you can see. There's nothing to see. It's healed up really well. But it took a bit longer than usual. I suppose that's the pain of getting old, isn't it? Things don't work as they used to. Anyway, onward. I get so excited about YouTube videos about Linux targeted at a general audience, to the extent that the audience for this channel is general. I really genuinely think we could be seeing a sea change for Linux on the desktop. Well, I mean, I love Linux and I keep on thinking more people should use it. But I think this predicted year of Linux on the desktop thing could be a little bit, perhaps, premature, to be honest. I'm not sure that Linux is actually ready to go mainstream. And most of that is just because there's just a little bit more DIY involved in running Linux than there is Windows. I don't think it's actually that difficult, and I think once you get past the initial kind of, it's not even shock, the initial hump of the kind of difference between Windows and Linux, I think it's actually quite, especially if you use something like Linux Mint or Ubuntu or one of those sort of easy distros, it's actually really simple. But I'm not sure that Linux is ready to supplant Windows as a desktop OS. And I think a lot of that is just down to the fact that there are too many choices. It's really fragmented. Linux is really kind of all over the place, in a good way, but in a way that makes it confusing for people outside of the community. I also think that there are elements within the Linux community that are probably putting people off from joining the community. It's a weird thing, isn't it, that enthusiasts for a thing can sometimes be so enthusiastic about their thing that it puts off newcomers. I think there is a little bit of that with the Linux community, where it's a proudly sort of DIY, self-build, self-reliance type of solution, I think sometimes that attracts the kind of people who won't necessarily be very tolerant or welcoming to people who haven't got a clue and are starting out and are asking all the stupid questions. It's a shame. But anyway, I'm not quite sure that Linux is going to storm the desktop space, but I'm still not booting into Windows and it's working perfectly fine for me. This was on a little piece of sea glass I found on what was supposed to be a fossil hunting video. Those mixed colour glass chunks are pretty desirable finds. They're known in the business as multis, and they're one of the main things people look for on the famous sea glass beaches like Seaham. That and the fun colours. The fun colours, I think, what we're talking about, blue, red, purple, probably. Sea glass, the rare colours. So sea glass, mostly what you find is clear and green and brown, the bottle colours. But occasionally you'll find fragments of sea glass that came from perhaps a vase or a decorative bottle or something like that, or an ornament. And those can often be more than one colour, and they might be an interesting colour like blue or purple or red or mixed colours, multis. Yeah, I have actually, it's weird, I never really heard that term multis until this comment, and then noticed it everywhere. Actually, I was watching a couple of mudlarking videos from Kit and Caboodlers, and they were talking about multis all the way through the video. And it's weird, isn't it? Once you notice, it's the old Baader-Meinhof effect. Once I noticed something, once something was pointed out, I'm seeing it everywhere. Sea glass multis. I'll be on my lookout for those, actually. I think that piece of glass I found was probably from two separate bottles that had been melted together, perhaps in a landfill or a beach fire, and then eroded down into a nice little nugget. My dream video of yours is trying to do a limited budget food video in Spain. Since you travel there somewhat often, it would be very fun to try out, and more challenging too, I might say. So this is a really interesting idea, and I did intend to do this in my recent trip to Spain. I did think, yeah, I'm going to go to the supermarkets, pick a few cheapish items, make a few meals in a kind of not exactly budget context, but perhaps in the kind of cheapish series. It turned out to be not very practical to do that because I was only there for 7 days. I was staying with family, and it turns out that really the reality of when you're there on a family holiday in somebody else's house, in somebody else's kitchen, it becomes less of a viable proposition just to say, hey, do you know what I should do? I want to go shopping and then spend a whole day cooking nonsense in your kitchen. It just didn't quite work out. And I didn't want to really push it because I don't mind inflicting this kind of challenge cooking nonsense on myself, but it becomes a bit more of a nuisance when you drag other people along with you, less than willingly. So I didn't want to push that, and I didn't do the budget challenge. I did a little bit of the preparatory scouting in the shops, and I did find some interesting things.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So a few of those are on your screen right now. So I found jars of lentils and beans that were certainly compatible with a cheapish cooking episode. Bread was generally quite cheapish in Spain. You can get a nice baguette for about 49 euro cents or 45 euro cents, I think. There were things like sliced meats and sliced cheese, quite small packets, but again under €1 in price. And then fruits and vegetables. If I'd gone to the Sunday market, fruit and veg there was obviously really cheap. I didn't get a chance to go there this time. But even in the supermarkets, things like things that are grown relatively locally, like tomatoes and peppers, are actually quite good value. So it would have been possible, I think. My plan was to spend less than €10 and make a nice lunch for a group of 4 people. And I think that would have been possible, but it just kind of didn't work out because, as I say, when you're staying with other people and using their kitchen facilities, it doesn't quite always sit right to say, hey, why don't I spend hours and hours in your kitchen cobbling together a weird meal for us all? It just didn't quite work out. Maybe one day. Maybe if I go there and stay in a self-catering apartment or something, I might get a chance to do that. Not this time, sadly. Here's an interesting one. Mike, have you ever eaten hostas? Hostas are a garden plant that people who love hostas love hostas. They're a kind of leafy garden plant, mostly grown for their foliage effect, I think. They do have flowers, but I think they're mostly grown for their striking leaves. Much loved by slugs, and so everybody who grows hostas, I think, has problems with slugs and snails eating them. But anyway, have you ever eaten hostas? I just watched a video celebrating Appalachia of someone picking the young spears and roasting them. Apparently they taste just like asparagus. So hostas are related to asparagus. They're in the kind of Asparagaceae, which used to be... Well, that whole plant family got divided up and rejoined and things. The taxonomy of that family got rewritten, I think, in light of genetic studies and things like that anyway. But so hostas are in the Asparagaceae, which more or less synonymous to Liliaceae, but things have been, as I say, broken up and rejoined and so on. But so hostas, yeah, edible apparently, related to asparagus. And it's interesting you bring that up, actually, because I had been thinking at the time of reading this comment how few leafy vegetables we really have. We have lots and lots of fruits, lots and lots of vegetables that are actually fruits, like cucumbers and pumpkins and peppers and tomatoes and aubergines. And we have quite a lot of root vegetables, you know, carrots and potatoes, sweet potatoes, turnips, swedes, parsnips. But we don't... The kind of categories of leaves that we eat as vegetables really comes down to kind of lots of lettuce type things, lots of cabbage and mustard type things, and spinach type things. Things in the daisy family, which are lettuces and such, and chicory and endives and that sort of thing. Things that are in the mustard and cabbage family, the Brassicaceae, so mustards and cabbages and cauliflowers and rocket and pak choi and those sorts of things. They're all in the mustard family. And then things that are in the spinach family, the Amaranthaceae, which is spinach and then spinach beets. And apart from that, if you look around the supermarket, certainly anyway, what other leafy vegetables do you find? Not many. You'd find a lot of minor salads, so corn salad and little things like that, perhaps. But in terms of vegetables, leafy vegetables that we cook and eat as cooked vegetables, there are surprisingly few categories. And so it could be quite interesting, really, for hostas to join into that. I don't know if the full-grown leaves of hostas can be eaten. That's more research required there, but thank you for that comment, because I wasn't aware you could eat them. I don't grow them. I have a feeling they'd be difficult to grow here anyway, because we've got a lot of snails in the garden. Although actually a lot of snails are detritivores, so they just eat decaying vegetation, so they're actually the gardener's friend. But I think hostas probably wouldn't do all that well here, but whilst it is an environment that they would probably enjoy, it's relatively damp and cool. I have a feeling they would just get eaten to pieces. But anyway, I will do more research on that, so thank you for that comment. This is a comment on the woodland sculptures. There should be a spoon sculpture. Spoons are important. I agree. Spoons are important. I've often thought that actually I would love to get trained, properly trained, to use a big chainsaw, and then go and, with permission of course, find an enormous fallen beech tree or something like that, a huge trunk of beech, and carve it into a gigantic spoon and just leave it there, take away all the shavings and all of the cuttings and things, so that people could just come across this enormous spoon that's way too big for anybody to lift and has no real visible signs of how it got there, and just this enigmatic giant wooden spoon in the woods. That's one of my private fantasies, is to carve a massive spoon sculpture, you know, the kind of sculpture that's big enough for kids to climb on, and just leave it there for people to discover and wonder about. Recently watched a video about the forgotten vegetables of the medieval period and thought it sounded like something you would be interested in exploring. So cardoons, skirret, fat hen, Alexander's, salsify, good King Henry, scorzonera, lovage. I've seen that video now. Actually, it was in my feed, but I watched it after reading this comment, And it is quite interesting. There are quite a few ancient vegetables that were in place. I think they were supplanted by things that people thought were superior. So skirret, for example, is a vegetable in the carrot family. It produces these clusters of little fleshy roots that are apparently quite sweet. It was supplanted by parsnips and carrots, I think because parsnips and carrots grow big, whereas skirret produces this cluster of relatively slender little roots. But it's still available, and it's still grown, you know, as a minor vegetable by enthusiasts and so on. So I think maybe next year, it's probably a bit late for this year, I think maybe next year I will seek out some of these ancient forgotten vegetables and we'll have a go at growing some of them. I have got a few of them in the garden already. I mean, like lovage I've already got in the garden. I haven't ever cut it and eat it. Lovage is another carrot family thing. Looks a bit like celery. It's been replaced pretty much by celery. People grow celery as a vegetable now, which is harvested as a whole bunch, whereas lovage would be a plant that you'd grow and you'd cut pieces and just cut and use as you wanted. But very similar vegetables. And yeah, I've got lovage in the herb patch, so maybe I'll cut and use some lovage in a video coming soon. But yeah, the rest of them, Good King Henry and Goosefoot were in there actually. I think Goosefoot, was it? Fat Hen. All these Goosefoot family things. They grow as weeds around here anyway, so I do eat those sometimes. Alexander's obviously quite a common weed, a coastal weed. So there are some of these that are still around, but people neglect them as vegetables. I think probably ground elder should be in that list as well, because it's another one of these things that was deliberately introduced and brought here as a vegetable. Brought here by the Romans is the usual story, but I'm not sure how true or not that is. But anyway, yeah, I think next year we'll seek out some different ancient vegetables and give them a try. This was on the gold panning video. Be interesting if you got yourself a bag of pay dirt to review. That way you can practice your panning skills and get a bit of gold. That's a really interesting idea because gold panning in the UK is difficult. It's difficult legally, actually, because all of the gold in the UK belongs to something called Mines Royal. So basically, if you go and find gold, it belongs to the Crown. It's just one of the minor things about living in a monarchy, I suppose. Other forms of government stroke organisation have their own advantages and disadvantages. But yeah, so if all of the gold that's in the ground in the UK is considered to be the property of the Crown, so you have to go and get permission to do panning, which they just don't grant, except in a few minor cases where landowners want to do panning. I think there's a place in Scotland you can go and do gold panning, where they've got the license to go and do gold panning, and you can pan in this river. I may go and do that sometime actually, because it sounds interesting. But buying a bag of pay dirt, which is notionally dirt that's been dug out of a gold-bearing area, but in practice it's probably been salted with a little bit of gold dust or small gold flakes or whatever, and then sold usually at more than the value of the gold in it. But it's a good way of practicing gold panning. So I may well seek out a bag of pay dirt and give that a try. And I might try panning it with a pan that's very similar to the one that I used, the plant tray pan that I used in Spain. And then maybe see if I can get a proper gold pan and see what the difference is. Because obviously if you keep all of the stuff that you pan out, if you do it in a big bucket, you can pan it as many times as you like. And so we could do that and see what the difference is between panning with the proper equipment versus panning with impromptu makeshift equipment. Next one was on one of the beachcombing videos about when I picked up a mermaid's purse, which is a shark or ray egg case. We used to call those mermaid's purses crispy bats. That is weirdly appropriate, although they don't really look like bats. I suppose they look a little bit like the Batman logo or the Batman symbol. But yeah, crispy bats, I like that. Next one was also on a beachcombing or fossil hunting video. I'm not really sure if this has happened before, but would you be able to showcase your entire collection to us someday? So this was my fossil collection they're talking about. Really good idea. I think I will probably save that idea and have that on the back burner until perhaps when I'm not feeling very well, or perhaps some other thing causes me not to be able to get out or make videos of other kinds. So that's one of my kind of reserve videos for when I need to make some content, but I'm not able to go and make the content that's elsewhere on the list. There are actually a few show and tell things that I've got in reserve. One of them is that I bought the version of the ZX Spectrum Next, not the actual ZX Spectrum Next because I missed the Kickstarter for that. But there is an offshoot of that called the Ngo, which is a completely licensed remake of the ZX Spectrum using modern components. And I've got one and it's in the box and I have opened it and tested it, but I haven't done that on a video. So at some point that could be a show and tell thing. But as I say, I'll keep these show and tell things, I think, in reserve in case I catch a cold or something like that and can't go and do other stuff. Or perhaps if it's just chucking it down with rain or we get snowed in, that's a good idea for a video that we'll just keep in reserve anyway. And finally, am I the millionth subscriber? So lots and lots of excitement from people about the fact that this channel is very, very slowly approaching the 1 million subscribers mark. I think at the time of making this, we're about 400 subscribers away from the 1 million. It does keep going up and down though, actually, which is just the nature of the subscribers count on this channel. People often subscribe on the strength of one video and then they realize I make other kinds of videos and they don't like that and they unsubscribe, and that's fine. So sometime in the next weeks, months, this channel's going to go past 1 million subscribers, I think and hope. And so there's going to be some stuff happening around all of that. But thank you for all of your congratulations, and premature as they are, and well wishes that we're nearly at 1 million subscribers. It is quite remarkable that that's happening, and I still can't quite understand how it all happened. From creating a YouTube channel that's just about stuff that I'm doing, it's remarkable that there are nearly 1 million people interested in being involved in that. But there you go. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for all of your slightly premature congratulations. So that's it for this bit, and thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.